Tom was a man in his mid-40s, living a life that looked perfectly normal on the outside but felt like a stormy ocean on the inside. Every morning, he woke up with a sinking feeling in his chest, a sense of dread that clung to him like a shadow. He had a job, a house, and people around him who cared, but deep inside, he was lost. His mind was a battlefield, full of fears, doubts, and unshakable memories of past mistakes. Tom had always been hard on himself. Every day, he felt like he wasn't good enough. He wasn't doing enough at work, he wasn't a good enough father or husband, and, most painfully, he wasn't enough for himself. He felt like he was trapped in a life that didn't fit him anymore. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt at peace. One particularly gray morning, Tom sat in his car in the parking lot outside his office. He stared blankly at the dashboard, unable to move. The weight of his thoughts made his body feel heavy, like he was sinking into the seat. His breathing became shallow, and the familiar tightness of panic began creeping into his chest. It wasn't new, this feeling, but today, it was stronger, louder. His heart raced, and a sudden wave of fear washed over him. He felt like he was about to break, to shatter into pieces. "What's wrong with me?" he thought, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Why can't I just be normal?" His thoughts spiraled. "I'm failing. I'm useless. I'm so tired of pretending. I can't do this anymore." As the panic rose, his mind raced faster. He thought about driving away, disappearing, leaving everything behind. He could feel the walls of his mind closing in, suffocating him. For the first time, he wasn't just scared. He was exhausted from the fight. He just wanted it to stop. And then, something unexpected happened. Tom's mind went completely silent. In the midst of his panic, there was a strange stillness, like the eye of a hurricane. He wasn't thinking anymore. He wasn't feeling. It was as if, for just a moment, the person he had always believed himself to be, the person who was scared, lost and full of shame, simply disappeared. It wasn't the terrifying kind of emptiness he had always feared. It was calm, peaceful. He wasn't anyone anymore. He wasn't Tom with all his problems. He was just there, existing. He felt like he had slipped into some vast open space inside himself, a place he didn't even know existed. This, without him knowing, was what some call an ego death. It's when the sense of who you are, the I that lives in your head, just fades away, leaving only awareness behind. This moment for Tom felt like stepping out of a prison cell he had built for himself over the years. The walls of self-doubt and fear were gone. He wasn't the scared, broken man he thought he was. In fact, in that moment, he wasn't anyone at all. He was just aware. But how could this happen? How could someone's entire sense of self just disappear like that? The truth is, the idea of self, the idea that you are this person with a name, a body, a job, and a life, is just a thought. It's something we create in our minds, and we get so wrapped up in it that we start to believe it's real. But in reality, there's something much deeper beneath the surface. Some call it awareness or consciousness. This is the part of you that doesn't change. It's the part of you that's always there, watching everything happen, even when you don't notice it. Tom had never thought about this before. He had always believed that his thoughts, his feelings, and his past were what defined him. But now, in this quiet, still moment, he could see that they were just stories his mind had been telling him. And like all stories, they weren't real, not in the way he had believed. The panic that had gripped him moments before was gone. In its place was a profound sense of relief. He didn't have to be the person he thought he was anymore. He didn't have to carry the weight of his past or fear the future. All those things belonged to the ego, and the ego wasn't real. Tom sat there for what felt like an eternity, just breathing. There was no rush, no urgency. He didn't have to get out of the car. He didn't have to go to work. He didn't have to do anything. And for the first time in his life, that was okay. As he sat in that stillness, Tom began to understand something that had been buried deep inside him all along. He had spent his whole life trying to be someone, trying to be good enough, trying to succeed, trying to make people like him. But all of that was based on a lie. The lie was that there was something missing, something he needed to find outside of himself, but there wasn't. Everything he had ever needed was already within him. He just hadn't seen it before because he had been so busy trying to become something else. This is what it means to stop seeking. When you stop trying to become something, you start to see that you've always been whole. You've always been enough. The idea of searching for happiness, success, or even enlightenment is based on the belief that you are lacking in some way. But that's the trick. The search itself is the problem. You can't find what you're looking for because it was never missing in the first place. Tom's mind drifted to the words he had read somewhere once, words he had dismissed at the time but now felt so true. The search for truth ends when you recognize that you are not the seeker. You are not the one who is looking for freedom. You are already free. As Tom sat in his car, something incredible happened. He stopped fighting with himself. He stopped trying to figure everything out, stopped trying to be perfect. He just was. And in that being, he found a peace he had never known before. This wasn't the kind of peace you get from solving all your problems or making everything in your life perfect. This was a different kind of peace, one that comes from realizing that you don't have to fight your problems at all. In fact, you don't even have to call them problems. They're just experiences, things that come and go, like waves in the ocean. And you, the real you, are the ocean itself. Calm, vast, and unaffected by the waves that rise and fall on your surface. Tom's panic was gone, but more than that, his fear of life had disappeared with it. He realized that the thing he had been most afraid of wasn't life, it was himself. He had been afraid that he wasn't enough, that he was broken, that he was a failure. But now he knew that none of that was true. The ego, the part of him that had always been scared, wasn't real. It was just a thought. And thoughts don't define who you are. He felt lighter, like a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. The day was still gray. His life still had its challenges. But something inside him had shifted. He walked into the office, not as the man he had been before, but as someone new, someone free. From that day on, Tom lived differently. He stopped chasing after things he thought would make him happy. He stopped trying to be someone else. He embraced the stillness inside himself, and whenever the waves of life got rough, he remembered that he was the ocean, not the waves. Life didn't stop being hard for Tom, but he had stopped being hard on himself. And in that simple, quiet shift, he found the peace he had been searching for all along. If you liked the video, you might also like this one.